Chapter 449. As a female warrior born in the Amazon, Diana didn't know etiquette at first, but after more than 100 years in human society, she had learned a little. She wiped the oil stains on her hands and counted with her fingers to think of a solution for her. I think there are a few ways to get credit. First of all, eliminate discrimination between men and women. I've been doing this for more than 10 years. If you were to do it, the effect wouldn't be much. Diana was really worried about this matter, and Thea did not have any good ideas. She nodded. This was the general situation, and it had nothing to do with wisdom. Secondly, eliminate war, save children, and pay attention to the vulnerable. Provide them with some work opportunities, provide free medical treatment, help people below the poverty line. It was obvious that Diana had been paying attention to these social issues, but her words carried little weight, and she did not have a good way to promote this matter. Not only did she have a headache over these issues, Sia also found it extremely difficult to deal with them. To put it in an exaggerated way, if she took Mora's speech during the mayoral election, there were tens of thousands of words on it. Every politician had promised a bunch of things to the voters, but it was still the same. For thousands of years in human society, there were so many people in high positions and selfless politicians who could not do it, and the two of them, demigods, could not do it. Thea pondered for a moment. The national gene injection was definitely not possible, but some special drugs that could cure terminal diseases at the genetic level could be manufactured and put into the market at a low price to see the reaction. I think, She was just about to speak when she was startled by a palpitating heart. Something seemed to have happened in a very distant place. Diana's level was high, but a pure warrior's reaction to abnormalities was not as sensitive as her. She saw that she was halfway through her sentence and carefully felt the changes around her, but unfortunately, she did not feel anything. Our world seems to have a hole in it? Thea had secretly made a lot of arrangements before. She did not know which one was activated, but her intuition told her that it was a big deal. The two women did not have time to talk. They flew out of the atmosphere, and Thea looked into the distance. At the same time, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, on a small island in the Azores, the buildings that were originally full of indigenous style were crowded today. After the famous archaeologist Dr. Daniel Evans received mysterious financial support, he stole the trident of the Sea King Arthur Curry a few years in advance in the original time and space. He led a large group of media reporters to open the so-called Gate of Atlantis. What the reporters at the scene recorded was not a glorious era, nor was it a treasure of an ancient civilization. This middle-aged man with an elegant temperament opened a passage that had been sealed for tens of thousands of years. Countless giant creatures that had been sealed by the Atlanteans and the Greek gods were released from the passage. The cameras were pushed down, and a few reporters who were close to him were torn to pieces on the spot. The rest of the people ran away, but they forgot that this was a small island, and they had nowhere to run. The giant creatures did not touch Dr. Evans, who was already dumbfounded. It was not that they were merciful, but they wanted to continue mocking this upright middle-aged man. Thea saw this scene and secretly sighed in relief. Fortunately, when the barrier between the two worlds was broken, she sensed it. Otherwise, the casualties would be greater. She was the one who instructed the Court of Owls to transfer the mysterious funds that Dr. Evans received. Her purpose was to release the Greek hero Hercules, who was trapped on the other side of the passage, and obtain enough divine power of the earth attribute to establish a complete magic cycle. Although it was Dr. Evans who stole the trident, and it was the giant creatures who bewitched him to open the passage to the balance of order, she was also an important participant in this matter. The weight on the side of chaos was heavily added, and both sides were almost equal, which made her heart ache. She asked Diana to put on her equipment, and she hesitated for a moment. It was not time for her to officially stand in front of all the media, so she also put on her hood, and the two women were directly teleported to the small island. From the time the doctor opened the passage to the time when Thea and Diana arrived at the scene, it was less than 30 seconds, but the situation had deteriorated to the extreme. The giant creatures seemed to be playing with toys, and dozens of humans were torn apart by them at will. The smell of blood on the scene was extremely strong. "Stop!" Thea shouted. The two of them suddenly appeared, and most of the ordinary people were already scared out of their wits. They did not notice them at all, but the giant creatures knew what was good for them. The two women were pure demigods, and they could not help but be vigilant. However, it was the young lady who shouted for them to stop. In fact, she did not have the intention to stop at all. She just felt that it was inappropriate to start fighting without saying a word, so she shouted to strengthen the momentum. These giant creatures all represented the consciousness of chaos. Killing one of them was greater than saving 100 ordinary people. At the same time, the sacred sword also transmitted a strong fighting spirit to her. Thea immediately made a decision. Today, she would use these evil descendants of the giants as the beginning of the revival of the sacred sword's glory. Thea held the sacred sword with both hands, jumped 10 meters high, and stabbed the sacred sword, which was overflowing with 7-colored light, into a red monster with wings and a bloody mouth in the middle of its body. The eyes on the monster's 2 shoulders were still confused. "Didn't you say to stop? You were the one who shouted so loudly just now, right?" However, before he could express his dissatisfaction, the sacred sword had already completely purified him. Taking advantage of the enemy's confusion, she separately beheaded 2 more winged creatures. Diana had been cooperating with her for a long time, and she did not hesitate. Like cutting a melon, she cut down a colorful monster that seemed to have the ability to turn invisible. Shameless surface demigods. Kill them. The leader of the giant creatures was a female giant creature with a snake's body and long hair. Her entire body was dark green, and she had 2 wings and 4 arms. Their population was not large to begin with. When they were sealed 10,000 years ago, there were more than 1,000 of them. Now that they had broken out of the seal, there were less than 50 of them. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, 4 of them were killed by Thea and the others. This made the snake woman extremely angry. Visible ripples burst out from her blood-red eyes, and Dr. Evans, who was very close to her, was directly sent flying. Humph! Mental attack. Thea was very disdainful. This was her leftover skill. This skill was very effective against small groups of soldiers, and it was very cool to see a large number of them fall like wheat. However, it was not practical in a battle of the same level. No matter whether it was herself or Diana, both of them had extremely high mental resistance. If they focused their mental power on a single point, it might be effective, but if they spread it out in such a large area, the damage would be negligible. Realizing that the snake woman did not have much combat experience, Thea turned the footsteps that were originally aimed at her and exchanged 2 blows with a purple vine-like creature with mouths all over its body. This creature drilled in and out of the ground, and it took her some effort. She used a hard earth spell to delay the creature's drilling, and then swung her sacred sword and cut the creature into 3 pieces. She still felt that it was not safe, so she stabbed the creature twice more until it turned into ashes. Only then did she move on to the next enemy. Chapter 450. Surround them. Overwhelm them with numbers. The snake woman was obviously not good at hand-to-hand combat. She hid far away and began to command. From time to time, she would send out mental attacks, sound waves, and charm spells. As a few powerful monsters gave up on killing ordinary people and returned to the island, Thea and Diana were under more and more pressure. However, they did not complain. Thea felt that this was her fault, and she had no qualms about it. Diana felt that it was her duty to destroy these guys. The 2 women relied on their skillful martial arts and divine armor to deal with dozens of enemies. Their main targets were those who could fly and those who could turn invisible. They would kill these enemies first and deal with the remaining few who had thick skin and flesh. Be careful. Thea kicked Superman's good friend, Jimmy Olsen. Today, the Daily Planet sent this camera-turned reporter. This kid was really unlucky. The death-courting experts, Louise Ryan and Clark Kent, went to investigate another big piece of news. The newspaper office didn't believe that Dr. Evans could come up with anything new, so they sent the intern reporter to the Azores. This kid was indeed one of Superman's Iron Triangle. He was very lucky. There were not many people left on the island, but he was still alive and kicking on the front line. This guy was also very careless. He did not forget his job at all. He raised his camera and took pictures. The sound of his camera not only attracted the enemy, but also Thea. Seeing the enemy spit out acid rain, Thea could not watch this guy die in front of her. She gave up on the enemy and kicked him away. Stay away! Seeing that this guy wanted to ask a few more questions, Thea had to use Magician's hand to pull him away from the scene. She looked around and pulled Dr. Evans, who was holding a trident, to the side to accompany Jimmy Olsen. If you want to interview someone, you can interview the person involved. With the troublemaker gone, the battle had reached a stalemate. Thea and the others could no longer move as they pleased. The enemy had cunningly used a few large monsters to block their movement space. Fear had little effect on these evil and chaotic creatures. After the two girls worked together to slay a monster that could absorb life force like seaweed, they finally stood back to back, panting. Originally, their physical strength had not recovered after the battle, and now that they were in a bitter battle, they could only use 60% of their usual strength. It was extremely difficult for them to fight. Hold on. I think reinforcements are coming. Thea cut off a monster's arm with her sword. No problem. I can still hold on. Diana used a lasso to catch a monster, pulled it in front of her, and stabbed it to death. Stop! At this time, another roar came from the beach. Unfortunately, the monsters did not fall for it anymore. We may be naive, but we are not stupid. You humans have shouted for us to stop twice in less than 10 minutes. You want us to fall for it twice? How could this be? The group of people continued to besiege the two girls as if they didn't hear anything. What happened? Give me back my trident. The Sea King, Arthur Curry, who had swum for tens of thousands of miles, landed on the island like a god descending from the sky. The result of his loud shout was that no one cared about him. He was a little puzzled and happened to see Dr. Evans holding the trident. The middle-aged man also knew that he had made a terrible mistake. If the two girls had not jumped out to fight to the death, who knows what would have happened. He threw the trident back to the Sea King. Arthur, I'm sorry. You can kill me, but please help the two girls. They can't hold on any longer. The Sea King wanted to see who was being besieged, but the group of giant creatures surrounded him. He did not have the ability to fly, so he stretched his neck to look at the outside for a long time. He could only see that the fight was lively inside. From time to time, broken limbs of monsters were sent flying. He stood for a while, but no one cared about him. Arthur, come and help. He could not see, but Thea saw him with her supervision. Although he was not as good as Superman, he was still a strong general. Hearing Thea's voice, the Sea King breathed a sigh of relief. He knew the combat power of the two girls and knew that they would be fine for a while. There was no need for him to go in and save them. If they could not hold on, he would be a dead end. His combat awareness was good. He looked at the enemies on the battlefield and found that Thea and the girls were prioritizing those who could fly and run fast. He immediately understood the intention of the two girls. Thunder flashed on the trident, and he attacked a winged monster. Not long after he joined the battle, Mela, who was always by his side, also arrived. The island was not big, and it was surrounded by seawater. Her ability to control water was at its peak, and countless water and ice arrows rained down on the giant creatures. The continuous killing of the four of them was indeed extraordinary, but injuries were inevitable. Thea had taken off her hood, revealing her long golden hair. The hood could be used normally, but it blocked her vision when she was surrounded. Although she used all her power, her right hand was still injured, and she could only hold the sword with her left hand. The giant creatures were the descendants of giants and Gaia's evil consciousness. They had surprisingly high magic resistance, mental resistance, and physical attack power. They had almost no weaknesses, and Thea could not use many of her methods. She could only fight with brute force. If she had not merged with her doppelganger, which increased her physical attack power, it would have been more difficult to deal with these enemies. Diana wasn't having a good time either. She was injured by an arrow shot by an enemy that looked like a purple-skinned tree. There was a bloody hole in her sturdy thigh. The enemy's attack was extremely corrosive. Even with her demigod body, she couldn't recover from it and could only fight with a limp. If she had known, she would not have fought with Diana. Thea felt that after Merlin abandoned his sword, her luck was a little bad. If the two of them were in good condition, they would not have to fight so hard. Use the power of will. She alone had killed 7 or 8 giant creatures, and the order scale was very satisfied. After canceling out the matter of secretly supporting Dr. Evans, there was still a lot of power of will left. Recover our physical strength and injuries, Thea chanted silently. In a place where they could not see, an obscure white light shone, and the 2 girls' physical strength rapidly rose. However, their injuries were only half healed, and before they could fully recover, their power of will was exhausted. They threw 2 more healing gems, and more or less relieved their injuries. The snake woman had been observing the situation from the periphery. At this time, she smiled sinisterly, and her sharp teeth shone with a cold light. Greeks and Atlanteans? Do you think that only the giant creatures are your enemies? Too naive. I'll let you see a real nightmare. This friend who has been with us for tens of thousands of years. Before she could finish her sentence, the entrance of the passage that they had escaped from was suddenly blasted open. Rubble flew everywhere and smoke lingered in the air. The violent reaction of divine power startled Diana. Sia hurriedly flew over to protect her, and only then did they manage to resolve the danger. Ah! Amidst the deafening roar, a muscular figure rushed out from the tunnel.